Hey everyone, today we are going to make kefir, and a lot of people have requested to know more about it and how to make it. So we've got all of our tools and ingredients that we're going to need. Kefir is really simple to make. The first thing that you're going to need is good milk. So here I have fresh, grass-fed raw milk from Shumway Farms Dairy, my family's farm, and we've got a clean quart jar, a metal mesh strainer, spatula, and a bowl we're going to strain it in. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll walk you through each step of the way. The first thing to do is to acquire some kefir grains, and they're not really grains, they're just called that. They're really bacteria cultures, and you can buy them at a health food store. Usually they have them in a refrigerated or freezer section. But the best way to go about finding kefir grains is to get them from a friend or a neighbor or someone else who makes kefir. And so if you don't know anyone, a health food store or a health community or some place like that may very well know people that make kefir that you can get some grains from. And so I got these from a coworker actually, and they're really, they've been amazing grains. So you can just see that the kefir grains are just these little balls, and they look like little cottage cheese type things. They're slimy in texture, but this is the powerhouse for making your kefir. These are the bacteria cultures that are going to ferment the milk and turn it into the amazing probiotic bomb juice that kefir actually is. And as I mentioned, I have grass-fed raw milk from my family's dairy. I highly recommend finding a really good, reputable, small farm where you can buy grass-fed raw milk that you trust and know is safe. If you can't find raw milk, the next thing I would recommend is a vat pasteurized milk that's not been homogenized. That's your second option. The next one would be just organic grass-fed milk. So those are some different options. Whole milk, I highly recommend you always make kefir with whole milk so you can preserve all of the yummy, healthy fat content that's there that's going to give much more content for the probiotic cultures to absorb. So I like to make about 2 cups of kefir every day. And so I just fill this jar about half full, and I've measured out my kefir grains so that I have approximately 2 to 3 tablespoons for this amount. So I put it in the jar, and then the next thing you want to do is cover it, but you want to let it breathe. I just take a half sheet of paper towel. You could use a coffee filter as well. And then I take the ring for the jar lid, and I just lightly twist it on over top. There we go. And now I'm just going to let this sit on my countertop for about 24 to 36 hours. So after your kefir has set for whatever amount of time you've decided to let it sit for, it's going to become very thick. As you can see in here, it's very set up. Now I have had this setting in the fridge overnight after it had already set out for 24 hours. So it's very thick and solidified, but you'll notice the top is going to have a cream line. If you're using non-homogenized milk, the cream line will rise to the top, and you can kind of see the culture on the top has kind of a yeasty sediment on the very top. So this is what your kefir is going to look like after you have let it ferment. So now that the kefir is set, we are going to strain it. And I use my metal mesh strainer, and I just go ahead and kind of tap the bottle, and it's going to come out into the strainer. You can see it's super thick. This is amazing kefir. You don't normally have to let it sit in the fridge overnight, but I just happened to because I wasn't able to get to it yesterday. So I put it in the fridge so it didn't ferment any further. And that's kind of a secret you can use if you want to slow the fermentation process down, just throw it in the fridge. So what we're going to do now is strain this out, and you're going to have to work it with your spatula a little bit. And the idea is we're trying to get all of the kefir out into the bowl and leave our kefir grains in the strainer because we're going to reuse those kefir grains again in our next batch of kefir. So the next thing that we're going to do is rinse our kefir grains. There's a lot of debate as to whether or not you should rinse them or not. Really, I have found that the environment in which you nurture your kefir grains kind of gives them each a different personality. And so sometimes I have found rinsing certain kefir grains work better than others. So you can experiment and try which you like best. Does it change your flavor at all or not? For these particular kefir grains that I received from a coworker, I actually found that rinsing them, they do a lot better, and the kefir has a much fresher, more vibrant flavor. So I choose to rinse them. You can try and experiment, but really it's up to you, and it's not gonna hurt them. So I'm gonna rinse them in cold water. My faucet's backwards, so it looks hot, but it's really cold. And I'm just gonna give them a little bit of a rinse. And even now get a much better visual of the kefir grains. So now that I've rinsed the kefir grains, I'm going to just transfer them into a fresh new quart jar. Now, as you progress in your kefir making process, your kefir grains are going to grow and multiply. And so each time you make a new batch, you may need to sift out some of the kefir grains. You want approximately 2 to 3 tablespoons per 2 cups or so of milk. It's not an exact science, but you don't want to get too many grains in comparison to your milk. So great uses for these are composting, pet food. These are amazing probiotics that you can use for other uses. You could even eat them if you wanted. They're just probably really gross texture-wise. So we're gonna put them in the jar now, and I'm gonna add some milk. Now I'm just going to let this sit on my countertop for about 24 to 36 hours. You can let it go longer. The longer you go, the more it ferments, the more yeasty, the more sour it's going to become. So 24 to 36 hours is the magic spot. If you can't get to changing it out, like I said earlier, just put it in the fridge. It'll slow the cultures down. If you go out of town and can't get to your cultures, put them in a little cup of fresh milk and just put them in your fridge. They'll survive, and then you come back, pull them out, and they're ready to go again. So that's it. Kefir is really easy to make, and it's a super amazing probiotic drink that will add gut health and immunity building potential to your body, and it is really yummy and delicious to make in smoothies, desserts, or just drink it like a drinkable yogurt. Anyways, get making some kefir, and if you have questions or comments on how it went, leave some comments below for us. We'd love to help you out in making raw milk kefir.